What's going on, everybody? You are listening to the Event Guys podcast. Our goal on this show is to help event profs be successful in this awesome industry that we're in. And whatever your path is, whether you're starting your own company, building your career, or developing your personal brand, we promise to bring together amazing guests and discuss relevant topics to help you along the way. Today, the Event Guys talk to Nikki Nuckols, who is the founder and creative director of Doodle Dog Creative out of Texas. She is a brand and web design expert and is a master at digital strategy. We tap into all things, including building a business, finding your creative voice, and so much more. Enjoy Nikki Nuckols. And so we just want this to be a really fun, good, open conversation talking about how you've built Doodle Dog, kind of what your history is, both in and out of the event industry, kind of get into your head a little bit about your creativity and how, your mindset and kind of how you move forward, and then just have some fun conversation and see where it goes, and hopefully people will love it and we'll all have a great time. So
sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. So your site, Doodle Dog Creative, on the surface, if you didn't know any better, looks like it could be aimed at anybody who wants a website designed or a brand identity designed, but right in the the website tag there, it does say wedding professionals in there. So obviously you have to some extent geared towards that, but maybe talk to us a little bit about your history in the event industry, about the decision to and how you built Doodle Dog, and just a little bit of the history of how you got to where you're at now.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I guess I'll start with kind of where I started and then how it turned into a lot of the event industry. So right out of college, my senior year in college, I already knew I wanted to do advertising marketing, and I started that at an ad agency, like the typical path anyone would go down. Started as an account exec. So I was, working on strategy and working on like controlling the account and kind of being the communication factor. But I kept finding myself sort of jealous to hand that off to creative whenever we left the meeting. And so did that for a couple months. And then my next step, I went completely creative, still at an agency, and did that side. And if you know anything about agencies, it's like two different worlds. So did creative side next. And then kind of had the same problem. I liked doing creative, but then I never got to talk to the client and was like stuck between this world of like, am I creative or am I account exec? I don't know. And so I started freelancing essentially to do both of them.
While you were still working there at the agency, or did you break away?
No, I was still working at the agency, and I wasn't really doing it for a business. I was just kind of doing it for my own like creative outlet, even though I was already doing creative. I needed that. So I started doing that just on the side and kind of picked up a little bit, kept saying, as soon as I get 5 clients or as soon as I get 10 clients or however many, I'll go full time. And I never really anticipated on it happening as quickly as it did. But eventually I got lots more than 10 clients and was making more and doing more outside of my day job, and working all night to kind of fulfill those clients, and broke away and went full time. So I only actually worked in corporate world for big brands like Target and all of those with big agencies for probably about, no more than 2 years max, right out of school. And then started Doodle Dog on accident also because somebody said I need an invoice and I didn't have like a legally established business. So had this little dog that I doodled and like stuck him on the corner of an invoice and sent it out with no legal right to do so. And sent it out to them. And then, they kept becoming my client, kept referring me as Doodle Dog. And I was like, all right, well, that'll work.
There's your name.
Wow. There it is. And back then at 22 or 23 years old, I was like, I guess this is how you start a business. And it wasn't, but legally I was able to actually get the business. So that's good. But I did have to fight for the domain a little bit because some random lady was dressing her dogs up in dog costumes and putting them on a site called Doodle Dog. So it took a little bit of work to get that, but
Did you almost just say, well, then just forget it, I'll just do doodledogcreative.com, or was that really important to you from a branding standpoint to just have Doodle Dog?
So I did actually buy Doodle Dog Advertising and Doodle Dog Creative and a whole bunch of other alternatives off the bat and use those before she would give it to me, and use that for like 3 years. And then finally she gave me the domain. Her daughter actually, it was like an older lady, and her daughter actually emailed me at one point and was like, I know you've been trying to get this from my mom, and we're ready to give this to you.
And she's our sponsor for the day, actually. And it's doodledogdressup.com.
Mom didn't leave me the house and the will, so I'm going to get back at her by giving you the domain.
Crazy enough. I mean, yeah, she finally gave it to me, but, that was before like the whole golden doodle thing. And now golden doodles are doodle dogs. And so it's just this weird thing because now I get all of these random emails from people trying to buy golden doodles, even though they have to submit their form request through our website. And I'm like, you just filled out a thing saying, what kind of business you are and everything, and then asked for a golden doodle. So
you already have the second business ready to
go.
roll. Yeah, you just
start
selling dogs now.
My
sell the domain and next.
I was gonna say my stepdad back when I remember a kid. His last name was Tyson, and literally we would get like phone call complaints about Tyson chicken come to our house. It literally happened. We get like I don't know,
just look it up in the phone book.
At least 2 or 3 a year. It was always comical to hear that.
I guess the best I can say,
so crazy.
Yeah, people ask me, well, what's the name of your band? I'll say, well, it's the Dan Rafferty Band. Dan was my dad, and we started the band together. And like, oh, yeah, I remember you guys from the 70s stuck in the middle with you. And I'm like, no, that's Jerry Rafferty. But yeah, he's my uncle. Yeah, that's what it is.
Distant relative.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so
people don't necessarily read anything, which is like my story that I always tell people when we're talking about website copy. I'm like, it's got to look good and the copy's got to work, but no one's reading it, if we're being honest.
If you got one sentence that looks good, everyone's happy.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear a little bit. You're working full time. You kind of need another creative outlet on the side. And so you start doing a little bit of freelancing and you said, okay, there's a magic number 5, 10 or whatever. And then all of a sudden it ballooned into a full-time business. How was how were people finding out about you? How was the word getting out about what you were doing? Obviously you were doing an amazing job and it grew faster than you had expected.
Yeah. So, two-part, I guess. When I first started, I didn't necessarily know I was just going to do work for businesses. So I just wanted to do design and talk to the client was my two qualifiers. And so I was actually doing some wedding stationery and stuff like that. Just basically anything anybody would come to me for design and then lumping it under this doodle dog name. So I did a couple stationery projects and, don't tell anybody, but hated it. It just wasn't I wasn't passionate about it. I liked the design part, but I liked the strategy of growing a business and having a reason behind the design and the challenge there. I don't necessarily love just designing to make it pretty. So, did a little bit of that. And that's kind of how I fell into the wedding and event industry is just a couple of those projects kind of led into planners asking me if I would do their websites and things like that. And then kind of started doing, have you guys heard of Thursday Therapy?
No.
Yeah.
So it was the networking thing. It's obviously with COVID not happening really right now. But back when I lived in Dallas area, it was just starting out. And so Kelly Simons was running it then and started working with her a little bit on bringing that to Austin where I was moving. And, at that point, again, I wasn't really hyper focused on the industry, but it just kind of all fell into place. And then everything from there has really been referral and word of mouth. It's just, I feel like it's a tight knit industry, even though our clients are all over the world. It's just still everybody's kind of looped together.
So to clarify on that, would you say if pressed on that, you basically are doing, the artistic work and the creative briefs and the meetings, but inquiries are steady and incoming based on people just talking about your work, or somebody saying, you should talk to this person, or somebody sees a site and says, I love your site. Who would you get it from? That really is the primary source of a steady stream of incoming business for you for what now has been years?
11 or 12 years now. And yes, I mean, I've done hosting the networking group, like I mentioned. Doing things like this has been huge, big or small. Sometimes I've done little speaking gigs that were 5 people and then some that were 400 people. And no matter what the size is, I feel like that's always been the most beneficial return. And I think it's just because we're pushing value out. But beyond that, it's absolutely been just word of mouth referral.
I want to dig into that a little bit because I'm trying to put myself in the mind of, let's say, again, we're focused today's conversation primarily on the event industry. So this could be a photographer or videographer. Let's use that as an example. Somebody who maybe is like really talented and knows they do good video work. They're just like an artist, and they're sitting there right now watching this going, okay, yeah, I want word of mouth. And they're like, I hear what she said, just do good work, but why aren't I getting, tons of calls? Like, what's the bridge there? I wonder. There's got to be some, the connective tissue or like the water between the ice cubes of saying, I do great work and it turns into referrals, but there's got to be a conscious effort, I think, somewhere in there to make those two things happen. Does that make sense?
Totally agree. Yeah. So I don't think it's been on accident. I mean, we ask for reviews, we ask for testimonials. After the project, we make it easy for somebody to recommend us. So there's never been this, like, I hope they tell somebody they like it. Like after our project, we always send them launch graphics, for instance. We don't put our name on those launch graphics or anything, but it gives them some reason and way to display what they've done to promote their own business, to say, look at our new website, for instance, or look at our new brand. And then they, more often than not, they'll either tag us or they'll, somebody will ask in the comments who did it, and that kind of feeds back to us. But I think the big thing is I've never said to somebody, please share this and tag us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've just made it easy for them to do it.
Yeah.
And it's always been that strategy behind, like, if you do good work and people are happy with you and you give them the tools to then tell their friends about it, why wouldn't they?
And there it was. So that's the connective tissues. Give them the tools. So it's like the note I just wrote down was, you created a system of generating word of mouth beyond just doing great work.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's fair. I think there was a huge turning point. At the very beginning, probably the first 5 years, it was like this mad rush to keep up with everything. It was just kind of like, I didn't start this business on purpose. It's really great. I love it. But what the hell are we all doing?
Yeah, right.
We just are kind of flying by the seat of our pants. And it was good, but it was that rush period where you're like, we've got to get things organized. Yeah. And then, after that point, I think we wrote out our entire client journey and treated it more like what I would do with a client if we were working with them, because that's the thing is we were not doing the same thing for ourselves as we were doing for everyone else. So we went through that client journey and said, like, here's the process someone goes through. Here's the concerns at this point in the process. Here's what they always ask. Here's what they need to hear at this point, and address those things. And then that last part, I feel like, is kind of the forgotten part. After the project's done, there's still a client. What do we do after we're done to keep them happy for one reason, and to keep them like telling people?
Yeah, could you mention a couple, if you're cool with it, a couple of the tools that you equip them with to make it easy to recommend you guys?
Yeah, so the launch graphics is probably the biggest one. We do send this email out at the very end that says that's a wrap, and it's just this like very conversational, like, we had fun with you. Did you have fun? Tell us what we did bad. Tell us what we did good. Like, tell us everything. And that way we have that quality control, for one thing. And that's just sent manually. That's sent from me personally every time. We also implemented this, and we're changing it now, so I'll tell you both. But we implemented this sort of proprietary setup of project management that we set up a long time ago. And we were like, here's the exact process someone goes through. And, here's the stages and everything that we push them through. We built this all out in WordPress, and it was great and beautiful. Well, now like Dubsado and Honeybook and all of those kind of do that for you and make it a little bit easier and bring in like, billing and all that. So we're actually changing over to Dubsado right now. But, those things, I think, as long as you've got them done right, do a lot of the steps for you.
Right.
Another thing that I think is huge that we did probably only a couple of years ago, we started this, is we realized the value in, websites are typically, and this is kind of the same with wedding clients. You get them kind of one time, you get this one shot to work with them. And then you're like, well, I hope they have a party in 5 years for some reason. Right. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to remarket to them. Websites are notoriously the same thing. People tend to just kind of do what's convenient at the time and not have that loyalty factor. So the thing that I think was really missing was, how do we keep being a part of their business, even though we're not managing their social or managing like their ongoing marketing or anything like that? So we started doing annual complimentary audits. So anybody who's ever worked with us gets a complimentary audit on their website once a year. That way, if at that year point they need some changes made, we're still like top of mind. And they have that kind of as an accountability factor to say, I better look at this again at least once a year.
That's awesome. Okay, I have a whole bunch of questions, and I'm going to jump around if that's okay.
Okay.
We were just talking before we jumped on with you about management software tools. I'm actually switching to HoneyBook right now, but in very much a trial, because it's very different than what I was using before. So I'm not 100% yet. I'm 100% invested in setting it up, and then I'm going to decide if it's the right tool. But we were just talking about how there's some things that I'm having a hard time adjusting to. And I've heard of Dubsado, and I've seen a lot of YouTube videos where people compare the two. Would you mind talking a little bit about, because I think for event professionals, picking that tool that you use to manage your process and all of the client service and everything is really important. What led you to pick Dubsado over a HoneyBook, for example?
Well, so like I said, we built this whole thing, and I am like ashamed to say how many hours that I put my development team on this, and I wanted it to be exactly ours, and I didn't want it to be like anyone else's. And because of that, I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted to be able to customize every canned email and every interaction. I wanted to be our voice and look like it was from us and feel like it was from us and not be like, oh, this is a template. So I think the reason I decided Dubsado was primarily that you could kind of integrate anything you wanted on it. The other thing I like, and I obviously, we're in the middle of transitioning right now, is we branched out into a second business a couple years ago. So I have the same business in two different markets. There's Doodle Dog, and then we launched Click & Co. a couple years ago, which is exactly the same thing in a luxury home builder designer market. So I needed to be able to manage both with two different brand identities, but the same process. And that allowed me to have like those two accounts running from one sort of hub. Gotcha.
Yeah, because I know you're using HoneyBook. You're using something totally different.
Pipedrive.
It's
our sales software.
Yeah, but you know what though? To your point, you said, "Hey, I'm ashamed to admit." I think it's probably served you extremely well that you did design that process and build it in your own, very manually via your WordPress, site that way, because it probably gave you a much deeper understanding and insight as to what the process was and what you wanted it to do and how you wanted to do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was great, and we used it for probably 4 straight years with no complaints. It just the amount of hours it took for my development to be on it and to maintain it and to update it when I needed something, because it was so custom, made it more difficult than paying the, $300 odd a month or a year for one of those platforms. And then, the other big thing is they tie into a lot of different platforms now automatically, that we don't have to build this like manual tie-in. It ties into Calendly. It ties into all those other automators that we're already using. So kind of makes things easier there.
Interesting. So back to you. I remember the presentation that you gave to us up in Bay Harbor back in 2019, I guess it was now, right? Because it wasn't 19. Last year is just kind of erased from our memory, and 2020 never happened. So it was almost 2 years ago now. But I was really impressed with your creative voice and your artistic style, which I want to talk about. But what really, really was memorable to me that I took away, and what you've already started talking about, is kind of the mindset of knowing how to talk to a client, and really the discovery phase, and getting them to ask the right questions about themselves. Your history, it wasn't like you spent 10 years studying under some, mentor who took you under their, where did you get? Was it natural? And don't be afraid to brag on yourself a little bit. I'm really curious, where does that mindset come from that allows you to see things in such a way, where you can ask those questions and where you see the process in that way?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I have kind of always had the way of thinking of things. But, growing up, I worked for small businesses. You know, I'm Midwestern originally. My parents are like super hardworking Midwesterners who, you know, taught us to work really hard and like the value of a dollar. So by the time I was a teenager, I was working for tiny little like local restaurants and things like that. And, you know, taking on responsibility that probably a teenager wouldn't likely have with a business. So I think that helped a ton just to kind of see at 17 years old or however old, like how to run payroll and, you know, things like that you just don't necessarily get in a bigger environment. And I did small business all the way until I started working like for ad agencies. That's all I ever worked with is little 5-person shops and kind of got to do everything.
I think that's a huge advantage that most entrepreneurs don't get. They just say, okay, now I'm going to start a business, and then they have no foundation on it other than maybe a book or two they've read. So that's really cool to hear. Yeah. Obviously, you're well invested into the creative space, and you have all of these business hats that you can wear as well. Do you where do you find yourself on that whole spectrum? Do you wear them all at the same time? Do you have a team that you've put around you to manage with certain things you don't want to manage? I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we have a team of 5, and so we're still small. It's kind of hovered around that number for years, to be honest. And I don't really want it to get big because I think we kind of lose that like personal touch. So rather than just scaling outward, we do keep raising prices and things like that and getting like more boutique-ish to keep that number and that like relationship the same. In the past, I have tried to have like other designers and stuff like that join because I still design every logo, every website. We have a full development team, so I don't touch that anymore. And then we have, some other positions too with like copywriting and things like that I don't work on. And absolutely, that's vital, having those people that you can trust and that know the process and will do it efficiently is great. But yeah, design is one thing that I feel like that's the reason people tend to come to us because it is, they see a link on a website and then they come to us for that. So anytime we've tried to kind of branch out from there, it's kind of been a pushback, back to like, oh, this doesn't feel like, what I was expecting. So the design is one thing that I feel like we're going to probably kind of keep small forever and scale on the other stuff.
That's awesome.
So with I would say a majority of event industry companies are small companies, right? Maybe solo ops or, just a handful of people. There's obviously your large corporations, but a majority of companies in this industry are small companies. With a lot of the companies that you meet with, what do you find are the most common needs? And I think today is probably different than it was 5 years ago. Today, it might be more a social media management package, where before it was always a website redesign, or maybe it still is. I'm not sure. What do you find are the most common needs or things that people aren't doing good enough on their own in this industry today?
Almost always branded web. So we'll offer more than that. We do ongoing like retainer digital strategy and content generation and all that kind of stuff. But almost every client that we work with will do something with their brand, whether that's, all the way back to the bones and redoing a logo and all that kind of stuff, or launching a logo, or it's collateral or, creating a brand guideline so they have something to reference when they do their own marketing, any of that kind of stuff. But website is our bread and butter. And website can mean more than it used to. Like you said, it used to be like, give me my 5-page portfolio site. And it was always the same stuff. Now I think it's more, how does the website tie into whatever I'm using to manage that journey? Is the form on the website then integrated back to that? Or what's the auto response look like on the contact form when somebody does submit? Do we need like a chat feature? And all of those things definitely changed when COVID hit because people weren't, able to meet in person and nobody had that like connection anymore. So in the last year, I would say we've done more work for existing clients that we've worked for over the last decade and just kind of like re-strategizing or adding e-commerce to their site or something that had to do with how their process has changed than anything else. I mean, that's not as many launches of new businesses, almost all like, how do we go back and refocus the ones that are going to make it through this?
In the past year, Nikki, did your business grow quite a bit through that kind of work, or like how does that work in terms of revenue without getting the specifics? Was COVID a hard year, or was it really a great year in this realm?
So month one of COVID was scary. Month one,
Tiger
almost
King,
everybody,
Netflix.
oh my God. Month one, everyone, I think in like 2-day time period, almost everybody called that was a retainer client and we did like ongoing work for and held their account. Almost everybody. They were like, we don't know where this is going. All of our weddings are canceled. Our events are canceled. We've got to stop. So we had our worst month that we've had since literally like probably year one. So that wasn't great. And that was whatever that was, March last year. Everybody was just panicking. So right away, that I was panicking and I was thinking like everybody out here's got the same hat on. We're all thinking, how are we going to survive this when everything changes? So right away we have a pretty decent size email list. So right away, this was probably at like 3 a.m, but I got on and I sent an email to the whole list. And I said something along the lines of, we're all scared type thing. How can we help you? So, we eliminated all minimums. So if anybody wanted something like little, like we needed to update our policies because of COVID, or we needed to pop up something that says we now do this, big or small, we dropped minimums. And then we also did where we extended payment plans. So we said, cash flow is the problem right now. Some of you have been in business 5-10 years. You're going to stick this out, but you have no cash flow. So, you want to work on your business. This is the time you should invest on like building a new website or a brand. So we'll stretch it out for you. Tell us how many months you need to pay it off. So we did that. And we only had one bad month. After that, it was pretty well back to normal. And our, scope changed for people. We did a lot of different stuff than we would normally do and kind of had to restructure because my developers are used to, here's a site, next site, here's a site, next site. It was not like 1 hour here, 1 hour here, 1 hour here. So we had to get kind of used to the new rhythm. But we just had the one bad month. And then luckily we were able to kind of get back on track.
Now that you've had this experience that we all share, we've all experienced differently, let's fast forward to, the ebb and flow of the economy, and someday down the road, something else happens in our life, whether the economy drops significantly or whatever. Is there a nugget or something that you've taken away from this experience in the past year that's going to be like the guidepost for you? Where like, I just know if something bad comes along again, something really challenging, I'm focusing on this through my experience that I've had in the past year.
I mean, the biggest thing that I took away was to listen to people, because I could have pushed the same stuff we were doing for years successfully. And, it's not to say we didn't do that anymore, but like I could hear everybody loud and clear. My phone was ringing off the hook saying we can't do this anymore. So I think it's just listening to people and hearing what they need. And as soon as I was like, hey guys, we're on your side, they just needed to hear that and know that we're not trying to like upsell you anything. How can we actually get you through this? So I think that would be the thing I remember next time is before panicking, hear what they need.
Yeah, I think that aligns with, it's funny because hearing you describe that, it's like all of us that serve, and the three of us primarily do weddings. I think we're growing into a lot of different areas, but more weddings than anything. And we felt like when we were getting those calls and emails from brides and grooms, postponing, rescheduling, and canceling, we felt like we were at the end of the line, and it was a very hard pill to swallow, and it hurt. And now you're telling the story, and I'm thinking about somebody like you now, who you were the next person in that line. So, the bride and groom are quarantined, so now they have to postpone or cancel or reschedule. And then that's all of their wedding vendors now who are being told. And then that goes down the stream to people like you who were servicing the people that were servicing the people. And now you're getting those calls, but the response is the same. The how can we help was the same way a lot of us did for our brides and grooms. How can we help, make this an easy process for you? So I think we were all in a very similar boat.
Yeah. So many wedding vendors said that to me. They're like, this is really hard for us. And I was like, it's I'm not trying to make it seem like it's even comparable. It was way harder for you guys. And to get through that and not be able, your hands were tied. being a digital business, we just had to get over the hump, and then it was easy. We didn't have to change much. You know what I mean? We already all worked remotely, and it was just restructuring a little bit. But people would call constantly and say that, like, you don't understand. And I'm like, for 1 month, I was right there with you. So I get it. And I'm definitely feeling for people that had it for longer.
Did you or do you still have an office for Doodle Dog, or has it always been working remotely?
We used to. So I started it in Dallas when we lived in DFW area, and we had an office there. No one really ever worked there. Developers tend to be pretty introverted people that like to work by themselves anyway. I would go and have meetings with clients if they wanted to meet in person. But that was 5 years ago. So maybe even longer than that. So we've been remote since then. And honestly, I think the whole, like, everybody going to the Zoom movement has made my life lots easier, because that's always what we did. We were always virtual meetings unless somebody said, I want to meet in person. There's really no reason to. For digital stuff, we can do everything online. So now that everybody's in my world and working from home, I'm like, this is easier.
Wait a minute. So you're telling me that the developers, it wasn't like that scene in The Social Network where they all had a house in the valley with a pool and people were jumping in, and the one who got the code done the slowest had to do shots of tequila. Like, that's not how it is for you every day?
Maybe when I worked at an ad agency, there were definitely shots and beer Fridays, but not beyond that.
No, I'm picturing more like Mountain Dew and Cheetos and like late nights, like coding. Like, yeah.
I always used to say when I started at an agency, it was such terrible pay that they paid us in like Chick-fil-A and beer Fridays, because the entry-level junior designer, they were like, you're going to be the one that has to stay late.
Yeah.
But we'll bring you Chick-fil-A.
I feel like Chick-fil-A, that would work around here. We've got only a couple. We just had one recently open on the east side of town.
Yeah.
And like the lines for it are ridiculous. They're all like on the main road, like driving back. The police are there and everything like that. So I think you could use that for currency for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So from an artistic standpoint, from an artistic standpoint, I'm just curious on, you personally, if you had to pick one, would you be an InDesign person, an Illustrator person, or a Photoshop person? Where do you love playing? What sandbox do you love playing in the most? Or do you even use Adobe products?
I'm only Adobe, but I'm InDesign all the way. And that's probably because I started in direct mail back when that was cool. And so when I was doing that, that's all we used for that. So I mean, Photoshop's my least favorite. Illustrator I'll use. They're pretty similar, but we actually make all of our sites in InDesign too.
Really?
That's interesting. Like, to a developer, they're always like, that's a learning curve. But for me, it helps me like make the layout more of a layout and less of like a layered email. Photoshop just feels so like not pretty.
That's very
interesting.
Interesting. So my college degree is in graphic design. I went to Western Michigan University. And I guess
fire up.
Yeah, go Broncos. I'm not Central Michigan, Chippewas. I might as well say it. I graduated from college in 1995, so that's how old I am. So back in my days, it was like Photoshop 1. Yeah. And
I think Mike and I were riding bikes on dirt roads back then.
And it was Aldus PageMaker. And then it was Quark Express. So way before InDesign was even invented, those were the page layout programs we were using back then. I know things have evolved a lot, but that's crazy. So you design the sites in InDesign, and maybe I'm kind of geeking out a little bit here, but what is the main tool you implement sites in? Is it WordPress, or is it another software?
WordPress is probably 90% of everything we do. Unless somebody is doing an e-commerce site and wants a lot of SKUs, then we'll use Shopify. Beyond that, somebody has to request if they want something else. Otherwise, we default to WordPress.
And has the evolvement, or the development of Squarespace and Wix and tools like that, has that hurt your business at all, putting that tool in the hands of people, or has that just made them realize that they don't want to do it and then driven them to you?
I think our client is the latter. They might try it, but then they realize they've spent 20 hours, 30 hours, and it doesn't look the way they want it to look, and it's not doing what they want it to do. So that's our client, or somebody who just says, I don't even want to learn it. Here you go. People that I think that Squarespace and Wix and all of those builders have their place. You know, a lot of people who are startups and don't have anything to invest in it. I don't think it's a terrible way to start it out. So we end up redoing a lot of sites that were built in Wix and things that after they've had that like 2-year window where they're like, all right, I'm making some money. This is actually going to be a legitimate business. Now I don't want to use this piece that I made that's not really fulfilling what I need. So I think it has its place, but it definitely hasn't hurt because we're not really marketing to that client.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nikki, can you talk to us a little bit more about your sales process? So when a client reaches out, you generate from a lot of referrals. Walk us through what that feels like to be a client going through your experience as they get acquainted with Doodle Dog and how that works.
Yeah. So a lot of this is automated at the beginning too. They go through our website. Almost always any lead comes through our website. When they do that, they automatically get a media kit responder. So they get the automated message back from me. They get the media kit. It has everything. So, you know, there was a time when I was like, I don't know if we should give everything away at first and tell everybody what we do and what we price it at and all that. It qualifies people. So we send that out right away. If they like what they see, then they can either use the link that's in that first email to schedule an appointment. They can do that directly. We use Calendly for that. If they don't respond, they get a second automated message that comes back to them saying, like, we hope you liked what you see. Let us know what questions you have. And that's when they either go into one pipeline or the other. They either fall into our pipeline of uninterested lead if they don't respond again, which we keep into a mailing list so they don't ever just get dropped off. If they are interested, they've usually scheduled a meeting by that point. So more often than not, that first call that I have with people, almost always they know what they want already. They've already kind of decided they're ready. They just have a few questions, and usually it's just that one call, and then we start or we don't start, you know, but they've already seen the price. They're already qualified. They know where they're at.
That's okay. That's huge from my perspective. So I'm right now looking at your 2020 digital report, small business digital marketing PDF. I actually grabbed that off your website after I saw you present to us.
Clearly I should do a 2021.
Yeah. You may have already done it. It's just, this is when I grabbed it, right? But
okay.
I remember thinking there's a ton of information, and I had just seen you present as well. So that was my first introduction with you, was actually seeing you in person. But from what you just described, and the reason we're asking this is I really think this is extremely relevant information for event professionals in the way that you do this, that you you offer so much information. Because I think the fear that a lot of event professionals have is if you tell them too much, they'll say no or they'll go somewhere else because you feel like it's when they talk to me. That's when they're going to want to book. I don't want to tell them the price until till they know they love me. And then I'll tell them the price because they'll be willing to pay more than they would have before that. But what I'm realizing in hindsight as I was looking through your small business digital marketing doc is that it was actually quite the opposite. It was the effect I got in reading this was you were so qualified to me because I knew all of I knew you were pros. I could see the capabilities that you offered. I could see a lot of the quotes and the things like that you put in here. That I guess my question, what I would ask you to talk a little bit about is if there's some, again, we're focused on, event professionals, but this could be any service provider or small business who thinks that way. I can't give away pricing that early. No, I can't share that much information early. You're the opposite, and obviously it served you well. How would you coach somebody into shifting into that mindset?
I mean, I think this is detrimental. I think when people, especially now, people want an instant gratification and they want instant response. They are shopping around. Of course they are. We all are too when we're looking for something. So I think it's super important to give them the answers to their question right then before somebody else answers it. I'm not always going to answer my email within 24 hours. I knew that. I knew that was not the case. So if you can personally respond to everything right away, I think that's great to do. but I needed something that was going to get to them within 10 minutes. I needed them to have this in their hands while they were still excited about what they saw. So I will tell you, almost every single person that starts the process says they decided to start with us because of a referral or because they liked how easy it was. They got the lead, or they submitted their information and they got the information back to them, realized that it was within their budget, and just knew it was like in good hands. They just felt like it was easy. And that's not something that people are used to right away because they have to jump through hoops to get the information they're actually hunting for. So I'm not saying everybody should put their pricing on the website. I think that depends on what client and demographic you're going after. If you are going after the budget brides, put it up there. Give them what they need because that's what they're shopping for. If you're going after somebody who's more of like luxury high end, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for the best of the best. So put that up there. Don't worry about the price. Just tell them how great you are. You have to know what they want to hear and tell them that right away.
Gosh, I want to ask about that. So if you are a luxury brand or you're going after that clientele, how do you show them that rather than just tell them we're the best?
Yeah, and to add on to that question, because that's a struggle that I'm with along, a lot of us as event professionals, use the knot is one of the big advertising spots, right, where every single person who pays their dollar to put their featured ad on the knot can say the exact same thing.
Right.
And they can get, a photographer to give them some cool pictures of a great crowd from a wedding, which then they want to translate into saying how they're the best. And it can be hard to make yourself stand out in the crowd when you're lumped in with all of them before they ever talk to you. And again, I'll be honest, I'm not just trying to...
I got an answer on that one. Do not put a packed dance floor with people's hands up in the air. Okay. Like that's the way to not in entertainment, not to stand out. Right?
All right, so good. There's tip number one. And I don't mean this to just, because I have you here, but when I look at your stuff, and I remember what I walked away from your presentation was, I don't know if I can put my finger on it, but there was something different, like something that I walked away aspiring to find a little bit more of the quality of what you were presenting. And I think that's kind of the thing I'm trying to nail down here too, is when you're stuck in the middle of a crowd, and you're putting that information out, what are some of the things you do? Let's say, for instance, you were one of 7, design or marketing agencies they were looking at. What do you think in your own head when you're thinking, I got to make sure that they see me differently than those other 7?
A couple of things. And I think it depends on what you're using as a service or product. But I think for me, since I am the one they talk to throughout the whole process, I want everything to sound conversational. I'm never formal. There's never a time when I'm going to speak to somebody that way. I'm going to probably drop an F-bomb here and there.
You haven't yet, and we're almost an hour in, Nikki, and I haven't heard a single F-bomb, so don't be afraid.
So, I think that making things sound the way it has to sound like you, it has to be authentic. So, if that's what they're expecting during the first call, I feel like they need to see that and read that and feel that any interaction they have with you. So I think visually and written needs to be on brand from that regard. I lost my train of thought on the other thing. I had 2 things.
Gosh, I got a question to follow up that. So, yeah, if you don't have what you wanted to ask, or what the second part of that was, Nikki, I'm really eager to hear you talk about when you're talking about being on brand and being on voice. How do you differentiate that? So the struggle I feel like I'm looking at right now within our business is I have a small team of people, and I'm not trying to promote myself as the, not the guy in the bright lights kind of thing. We are a team and we work as a team. And so how do you find and define that brand voice? Who is, my company's Elysium Experience. Who is Elysium Experience? And what kind of voice should they have on the website? How do we establish that consistency and post on socials and still have, videos without having a mascot or something? I don't know. How do you work towards that?
Yeah. So that's huge. That's a question we get all the time. And I think that goes back to a brand guideline, whether we're doing that for somebody or you're doing it internally. The way we do that is we put together, here are our focus key terms. Here is the definition of our brand and our voice and how that sounds. Here is the type of photography style we'll use. Here are the type of testimonials that we need to include. And a big thing there is making sure not all your testimonials have your name in them. People need to be able to trust that other people on your team are just as good as you. Putting your team's photos, doing everything like that where they're just as important in the process as you are, I think is a really big factor. And being small business, being that we aren't all in the same room at the same time right now, I think that's been a big struggle for people in the last year, is they're like, well, I'll just skip the headshots. It's we can't get everybody together. And I'm like, I think that's really important. People need to feel like these people are your equal, or they're going to always want you, and you're going to have a hard time scaling that side.
It's great tips.
Yeah. So with that in mind, as you build Doodle Dog up and keep going, where is your personal brand fall in all of that? And were you kind of trying to take that, or do you have any plans of ever saying, I want to step back from the active role and just, watch this team grow? Or do you really feel like, no, this is my passion and I always want to be, the front duck in the flying V, or where do you take yourself over the next few years?
Such a good question. Like I said, we did launch a second sort of branch 2 or so years ago. The reason for that is because Doodle Dog started out as this like cute, fun brand. It wasn't necessarily viewed as like serious or powerful or anything like that. It was just this cute little, we did wedding stationery and all of that. So I felt like, from there, we've been able to evolve the brand to have more of like a strategic thought process, and people trust it and believe it and all of that. But it still very much sits in like the female entrepreneur who's starting a business, or the wedding industry or event industry, or small business brand. That's 100% who our core audience is. It's very hard for like a corporation to come in and say, I'd like to work with Doodle Dog. It's just too fun. It's not the same appeal to them.
You'll have just too much fun, Mike.
So the second branch was primarily for like, if we're going to go with bigger audiences and bigger demographics that we're trying to target, or this luxury home builder market, it needs to be under a different brand. It's still the same back end, it's the same engine behind it, but it talks differently to those people, because that's not what they're looking for, is this cute, fun, approachable brand. So I think the way I see it going is Doodle Dog's right where it needs to be. I don't want to break what's working. It's found its little market and it works really well. And the next one found its market and works well. So I think I envision it being more sub-brands like that, to cater to specific industries and bring in the right people on who are already experts in those industries, to provide the same value, as opposed to me trying to conquer every industry.
Do you use the same team of developers and support people from Doodle Dog as you do in the luxury home agency as well, or do you have a whole separate team of people?
Same developers. So same back end does all of it. But the big difference there is in order to cater to that audience, I felt like we needed an expert in that. So we do have somebody that we brought in specifically who had 15 years experience in that industry, selling like publication ads and things like that. And so she knows that industry to a T, and she's more of the face of it than I am. I'm definitely, still the creative behind it, but she's the one that's able to guide and say, here's like the publications you should focus on, or here's when you need to invest in digital, and be that arm of it.
So I was just thinking, ever since I first saw you, a couple years ago present, and even before that, again, I've got a degree in graphic design, but I've been in the event industry for so long. I don't have the practical experience of a career where I've been doing it for all these years, but I know enough to be dangerous, right? Mm-hmm. But even me and a lot of other people, I think small businesses in the event industry, these small service-based businesses, could be very intimidated at the thought. It's like a pipe dream to think, you mean, wait a minute, hire an agency to brand my company and build my website and develop my logo and develop my message? Like, I could never do that. That's way beyond something like a small company like me. But I know what the benefit would be. Let's see, if I had the opportunity to work for you, I can already envision all of the things you could bring to the table. But for a lot of companies who might listen to this and who would say, man, it was awesome listening to her, but man, that's for somebody else that's got more resources than I do. I'm guessing you would have an answer to something like that says that you are accessible to people like that, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, some clients will tell us, I can't invest in a website right now. And that I don't ever think people should if they can't. You know what I mean? Don't overextend to market. But, for some of our clients, we're just consulting. So some people come in and just do like a website audit where we go through their website and tell them what we think they should do differently. One-time deal, send it off. If they want us to then implement changes, we can, but it can also just be that one time us giving them a document saying, here's what you could do better. Some people hire us for ongoing consulting where it's like a monthly call and we just talk through like strategy and all that kind of stuff. And then they take it from there. Most people who have us do anything with generating content like blog posts or social media or anything like that, we don't generally do a lot of actual implementation. So we're not usually sitting behind somebody's Instagram posting every day. We're usually telling them, here's the roadmap for it. Here are like some branded graphics so that it's not all just photo, and kind of just being like an assistant to them while kind of guiding them. So I think there's a lot of smaller ways for people to work with us. I think people get the most bang for their buck, so to speak, for doing like a brand or website, because it's literally handing us a blank canvas and us saying, here's exactly how we would do it. So I think you get more out of that, of course, because otherwise we're just kind of fulfilling what you're needing beyond just like coming up with ideas.
Yeah. Before we go any further, I don't know why I didn't notice this before. Is that a drum set behind you?
It is a drum set. I meant to ask that towards the end here. Are you a musician?
You guys didn't picture me as a drummer? No, just kidding.
I have for the last 54 minutes.
No, my husband's a drummer.
And
we call this my office, and then behind those doors, we call it his office.
Is it a hobby or is he a musician?
No, it's a hobby. I mean, he has played forever, but yeah, he just does it in his free time. And now my little 7-year-old is learning. He's doing he's learning Imagine Dragons Believer right now.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of funny. He walks around pounding on everything. He's like all over our house.
I wish we would have known this. We would have had him play us in and play us out. He could have done the custom intro music for this episode.
It's interesting you brought it up.
I sent them all out and said, you guys got to be quiet.
Yeah. This morning, I was just telling a friend of mine who's in town to visit for a few days that I need to sell the old drum set I have in my basement. It's not good enough for our gigs, and it just needs to get sold. And I was like, unless my son's going to play someday, he's like, no, you're going to buy electronic drums for those early days, so you don't have to hear that through the house all the time.
True.
Nobody plays the electronic. We have that in there too, and nobody plays it.
Yeah, what's the fun in that?
I'm like, that's the whole reason we got that. But I don't know how you're selling them, because somehow we have drums all over this house because he won't ever sell a thing. So
you could just mount them in different rooms, like a snare here and a tom there.
I've got too many. I've got to let go of some stuff.
Okay, so we've got a few minutes left, and as always, floor is open for everybody here. But this is such awesome. So a lot of the conversations we have with people are people in the event industry, and we get in their head and we're just talking about how they think. But with you, we did that. But there's also another aspect of this conversation in that anybody who listens to this conversation that we're having could very well decide that they would love to talk to you more and see if you can help them, grow their business and develop their brand. And what's the best way for somebody to start that discussion with you?
Yeah. Best way is to submit a form on the website. So
and what's the
they
website?
Can submit that. What's that?
Give a shout out to the website.
Oh, it's just doodledog.com. Remember, we got the little dog costumes off there.
That's right.
So
I'm right there.
Yeah, you can go there. We do have the auto chat on there. So if you wanted to do that, you can. The form is the best because then you get the link to the scheduler if you do want to schedule something, and you get the media kit too.
Awesome. I noticed in there that there is a hotel in Sicily. So you mentioned that you guys did work all over the country. It looks like you also do some worldwide stuff too. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we've done stuff everywhere, to be honest. And that, like I said, that's all because of the wedding industry. So anything we've done out of the US has all been venue or planner or photographer or somebody in that realm.
Cool.
He's a Sicilian. That's why Mike was asking that question.
I saw it. I've been there.
Oh, okay.
He's an Italian guy.
Italian guy.
So when you are doing your presentations, what do you leave people with, and what can you leave us with that is just fun, good stuff to close out a conversation like this?
Oh my gosh.
I know that's putting you on the spot.
Yeah. In regards to what? In regards to myself or Doodle Dog?
I guess so. Somebody listening to this is hoping to develop their mind and their ability to be creative and their ability to apply that to grow in their business. And you're a great story of somebody who has done exactly that. And it's clear when you go. Even things that when I go to your site, I love the consistency of there's some design principles about use of fonts and use of colors and and being very consistent with those. And it's funny, you still go to sites and you see 8 different colors and 6 different fonts, but that's there. And so there's a lot of things, here that clearly reflect your creative voice. So I guess that's what I would say is what would you say to somebody about how to tap into your creative voice and really, find that direction that is uniquely you?
Okay. So I do have like some basic rules that I always tell people. 3 fonts max. You can't use more than that.
Yep.
You can't use 2 of the same family that aren't the same. Like you can't use 2 sans serif fonts together that aren't the same family. Those are my font rules. If you ask anybody on my team, they would say I always make fonts smaller and more spaced out than they need to be. But I don't know. I think things need breathing room. And that's, I think, something that people, they get into a template, and templates are so often now like these full width images everywhere. And there's no room for your eye to like rest. So I think you need breathing room in any design. What are some of my other rules? And then I think it's just being true. I think people get stuck in the mindset of like, this is what I have to include in a website because this is what my 5 competitors are putting on it. And I think it's more important to think about what are the questions somebody asks me when I meet with them and what's that look like and what's that process like, as opposed to trying to check off a list. Well, this is what so-and-so has on there. Because I think then it always just comes off as like, it all blends together. Nothing stands out.
Yeah. That's awesome information. Guys, anything else from you guys?
No, Nikki, thanks so much for taking time and spending time with us today and chatting. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you guys. I'm so happy you asked me.
Yeah. This was a great one for me. Our artsy side, I was really impressed with the presentation you gave when I saw you. And I love diving into this because I think this is a part of, growing and running a business. Somebody could be a great musician, could be a great videographer, could be a great DJ. That doesn't mean they're a great marketer. It doesn't mean they're a great business builder. So anything we can do to help those people gain those skills or find the resources to somebody who can help them is really, really important. So yeah, all of the information you gave, thank you for kind of diving deep into some of that. I know there was probably some proprietary information in there, but we appreciate everything you shared with us. And we'd love to have you come back again when we come up with some other topics. And when we do, your husband will absolutely have to play the drums in and out of the episode, right?
Maybe my 7-year-old will be good enough by then.
Fantastic. I hear a little Imagine Dragons cover in and out of the episode next time for sure.
Yeah, all I got is George of the Jungle, so I can't really help it that much.
Gotcha. That's a good one too. That's a good drum. That's a good roll, and I like that one too. George of the Jungle. That's fun. All right, Nikki, you take care. Doodledog.com. Check it out, and we appreciate you being on here with the event guys, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Guys.
Thanks, Nikki.
Appreciate it.